women, Hispanic, Black, older voters, and independents are all breaking late for Kamala Harris. And it's showing up in the polls, in the final round of polls before the poll that matters on Tuesday. And we have a canary in the coal mine moment with Kamala Harris comfortably ahead in Iowa, of all places, which could spell potential disaster for Donald Trump. And the easiest way to make sure he never makes good on his threat not to leave office once elected is to never let him be elected again. You're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. Hit the early subscribe button. That's early voting that I can get behind. I'm Michael Popok, and I'm at the intersection looking closely at the poll results and what they mean. Let's start with the new blockbuster news. Donald Trump is behind in Iowa. And it's not because I think, wow, she's going to win Iowa. She's going to win the presidency. Kamala Harris, I mean. It's because if she is ahead, which apparently she is, by 3 points in Iowa in the final polling, she has clawed back from what was an 18-point deficit for Joe Biden. So she is 22 points ahead of where Joe Biden was just in 2.5 months. And that shows that the drivers in Iowa, older women, independents, are, because there's not a lot of black and minority, unfortunately, in Iowa, but they are driving the train late for Kamala Harris, and it's now showing up in unlikely places like Iowa. Now, Donald Trump lashed out already. Oh, we have internal polling. We're ahead in Iowa. I don't know what they're talking about. Look, I'm just comparing apples to apples to apples. I mean, this is just the same polling entity that's been polling in Iowa for the last year. And the reason I think this has a durable component to it, or a quality to it, that shows that things are finally seeping into the water supply, and we're seeing it in voting, is because of the groups that broke late for Kamala Harris in Iowa. I think are the same groups that are breaking late right now in early voting, and we've had record early voting in the battleground states that'll drive Kamala Harris into the White House. Women, older women, independents are driving this train in Iowa, and I think they will nationally. Let's take a look at the numbers. We also had some, I'm comparing this almost breathtaking. The Iowa numbers are so bad for Donald Trump that even Republican pollsters are saying there's no other way to explain this. She has leapt into the lead in Iowa. And now I think you can extrapolate that throughout the country in the battleground states. Let's make the math easy. If Kamala Harris wins Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, in the way that Hillary Clinton did not, she's president of the United States. That's it. We're done. Of course, there's other combinations that she can go through, but if the blue wall holds, which didn't hold for Hillary, but did hold for Joe Biden, she is the president of the United States. Sure, I love Nevada and Arizona and Georgia, but the way to the road to the White House runs through Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin if she can run the table there. Now, right now, the final New York Times Siena poll, which has been very harsh on Kamala Harris, frankly, and I don't think has been properly picked up the enthusiasm that she's generated, or the people that are going to vote for her, not just women, not just older voters, not just independents, but the whole group. And the fact that Hispanic voters, male and female, Black voters, male and female, are coming home in time to vote for Kamala Harris. They might have had their reservations. They wanted to watch how she was going to run her campaign, make decisions like what vice president she would pick, how she would do at the debate, how she would do at rallies, how she would do as the CEO of her own campaign. And she's done flawlessly. I mean, there's been almost no false steps in that. In the operation of that campaign. You can't say the same in the split screen of Donald Trump. It's only been false steps. I've never seen, I'll say this out loud, I've been following campaigns for most of my adult life, almost all of my adult life, including through college, and worked for quite a few of them. I've never seen a worse last 2 months of a campaign, last 2 weeks of a campaign, last 48 hours of a campaign than what I'm watching with Donald Trump. What am I watching with Donald Trump? Attacks on women, forcing himself on them to be their protector, saying in the last remaining hours that he should never have left office at all in 2020. He should have stayed in office even though the voters voted him out. The garbage man joke, the McDonald's French fry joke, the Madison Square Garden hate-filled Nazi-like rally. If you were trying to blow the campaign, I would believe all of these things. I would understand all of these things. Part of me is like, is he a Trojan horse? Did the Democrats plant this guy here? Are the Democrats really running his campaign to get Kamala Harris elected? I'm all for that, by the way. Let's get back to the polls. The Times Siena poll, very harsh on Kamala Harris. And I've done a separate hot take about the polls are being dominated by partisan, Republican, right-wing polling organizations. A lot of the nonpartisan ones, the ones that are reliable and scientific, got out of the business after 2020 or even after the midterms, leaving the field open. It's like a vacuum filled by right wing. And the right wing, 30 out of 35 polls, all for Donald Trump. But if you look at the nonpartisan traditional polling, and New York Times falls into that category, the last poll for them gives Kamala Harris the lead in 5 out of the 7 battleground states. 5 out of the 7 battleground states, you can pull over to Kamala Harris's column if the polls are correct. Nevada, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. That combination gets her the presidency as well, by the way. If she were to win Nevada, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, you don't have to win Michigan at all. And this would be a 300-plus electoral vote total when she only needs 270. And they're showing a national polling advantage just for the popular vote of 3 points, Kamala Harris. Now, there's been speculation that we'd all feel a lot better and sleep better at night if her polling advantage was like 5 or 6. But you have to also remember there's a margin of error in these polls that are tremendous. I mean, somewhere between 3 and 5 points. That's the margin of error. That means, for instance, nationally, she may be up 54 to 41. She could be, for all we know, based on that same scale, she might be up 13 points. And not now, of course, it runs the other way as well. But that's what these 4 and 5 points margin of error. It's plus or minus. It could be plus, and if you do plus and minus, look at the gap. But they are, the fact that I'd rather be her than Donald Trump right now when you're reading the polls. What I like about combining the 5 out of 7 battleground state polling predictions by New York Times Siena poll, her being up by 3 points nationally, I'd like it to be 4 to 6, but it could be under the margin of error, is what's going on in Iowa. Because that is not an outlier. That is capturing, I think, the mood, the sentiment of women voters, of older voters, mainly women, by the way. The men are still holding back a little bit. White women seem to be holding back a little bit to support Kamala Harris. And that's okay, because she can put together a Democratic coalition of the willing, coalition of the liberal, independent, progressive Democrat and anti-Trump vote to win this presidency. 75 million people have already early voted one way or the other in this country, whether it's by mail-in voting or absentee voting or early voting, showing up and actually casting a ballot. 75 million. It looks like we're going to be somewhere between 60% and 2/3, 66%, somewhere in there, of people voting who are eligible to vote, which for American is great. I mean, I know other countries are like, what do you mean you're not getting 75 or 80% of your, or 90% of your electorate voting? No, but if we get 2/3, we get 65%-ish, and that kind of turnout, I think that's advantage that is advantage Democrats. I know that the registration has caught up. Republicans have caught up, but still, we are still slightly a majority democratically registered country. And I think the other thing that bodes well is what groups are breaking for Kamala Harris. I'll give you another example in Iowa. RFK Jr. is still on the ballot in Iowa, right? He had once polled at around 3%, but he didn't get the 3%. He got like a point. So, based on this latest survey, so it looks like to me 2/3 of his vote have gone over to Kamala Harris, very little to Donald Trump. And that's another late break. See, that's what is the difference between Hillary having winning and Hillary losing, besides the fact she literally lost Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan by a total of 75 or 80,000 votes, is who broke late. It's the late breakers that determine the presidency. The likely voter who's already made up their mind, like at birth, that's not what elects. I mean, it does elect. But this last late break is breaking majority Kamala Harris by not a point or two. It looks like the late breakers are breaking to her by at least 5 to 8 points. And if the late breakers, whether they're independent, women, Hispanic, black, white, whatever they are, they're just waiting till the end, and that's vast majority going Kamala Harris, President of the United States. And so I wanted to do this quick analysis of what these last polls look like. There's some amalgamation polls, some polls of polls that just add up numbers. It's not really a statistical method that's recognized, just totaling up everybody else's total. It's not it. But like people like it as a proxy, like to see who's ahead. 528, which years ago had been very reliable, but that really ended in 2016. For me anyway. I stopped following 528, which New York Times acquired at some point, because they told me the day of the Clinton election that there was on Tuesday that morning, that there was a 90% chance that I'd wake up and she'd be the president. Oops, the 10% came in apparently. I just think polling has been really, really off. But when you see things like Iowa women pull in this wagon hard for Kamala and overcoming what was a negative 18 point for Biden and making it a plus 3 point for Kamala, it's unheard of. And it's rocked the world of Donald Trump. Maybe that's why he keeps saying in the waning hours and moments of his energy and at these rallies, when he's not looking like he's giving fellatio to a mic stand, look it up. Maybe that's why he says he'll never leave if he ever gets elected again. We should take him at his word and not let him anywhere near the White House again. I like where we're at with the polls. I wanted to do a hot take to talk about it. I like what happened in Iowa because I think it does extrapolate throughout the rest of the country. I think older women and women in general are going to turn this election for Kamala Harris. I think the outpouring of votes and early votes, which are breaking records in battleground states, could be disastrous for the Republicans. And I think the polls have been skewed by partisan right-wing pollsters and them not really publicizing, because it doesn't make great headlines, the margin of error in each of the polls. I mean, I know the margin of error literally works both ways. It's a plus or minus 3 to 5 points, depends upon the poll. But we're seeing manipulation on our end, Legal AF Midas Touch, we're seeing manipulation of the polls in order to do one of two things: suppress the vote, right? You tamp down the enthusiasm of the Kamala Harris campaign if you have fake news out there saying that Joe Biden is against Kamala Harris, or he thinks they're going to lose based on whatever polling he's seeing. That's a lie. Or that the Wall Street thinks she's going to lose, or this one thinks she's going to lose, because that, and it also, even if that doesn't work to suppress the vote, and I don't think it will, not given the record-breaking numbers of people already voting, Donald Trump still doesn't want his voters to vote early, which is, he still says, I don't trust early voting. You got to show up the day of, and that gets into the mind. That's an earworm that gets into the mind of his followers. They're like, oh, better not mail it in. Oh, it can't be trusted, those Democrats. And that, so I think this early vote total is where the Democrats are going to run it up. And then, sure, they don't stand in line on Tuesday for as large numbers as the Republicans, but they run up such an advantage, or should historically, mail-in, absentee, and early voting, that it can't be overcome by same-day voting, same-day election day voting. And so I think we're at that moment now. I'm not going to do many more polls here until we start getting some exit polling, which I hope the networks are going to do. And the question for me, I'll leave it on this hot take, is what are the networks going to do? We've traditionally relied on them and their polling operations and their chief pollster to declare winners at every state. And frankly, they've been right. I mean, There's only been a couple of times when they had to flip a state after a couple of days because it was in dispute and too close to call. But they're generally right. And even Fox News called Georgia for Joe Biden, and they were right. But are they going to be so fearful of the retribution of Donald Trump and the people around him that they're going to be afraid to call a state? And if they're afraid to call a state, then why are they holding election night coverage other than for ratings? I don't mean to be crass, but if you're going to hold election night coverage, then cover it and call the state. We kind of rely on it. We rely on ABC, NBC, Fox, MSNBC saying Georgia is for, and having the photos up there, or go down to 30 Rock in New York and watch the vote totals go up the side of the 30 Rock skyscraper. We rely on that. It's part of our American heritage and culture. It's like, baseball, apple pie, and mom, and Chevrolet, as they used to say. So I want to see what the polling agencies combined with the networks are prepared to do and to call. And if they're in this business, it's freedom of the press and free speech, and they got a number, the chief pollster says Virginia's or North Carolina's going to Kamala Harris, or Iowa's going to Kamala Harris, they better go on the air and say it at the appropriate time. So we'll find out whether we wake up on Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday morning with a new president or not, or whether that's going to stretch out another week or two. I'm hoping they have enough, and this outpouring of early voting means a relatively easy runaway Kamala Harris victory, along with long coattails to sweep in at least the Senate. We'd love the House as well. I'll follow it all. You know where you are. You're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. I'm Michael Popok. I'm at the intersection. Take a minute, speaking of voting, help us build this new pro-democracy channel in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network so that we are durable and we are institutional. I mean that in a good way. I mean, we'll be around for a while on the other side of Tuesday. And you can help with that right here. So until my next content, whether it's Legal AF the podcast or Legal AF the YouTube channel, this is Michael Popok, and I am reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.